Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to See It, a show about movies and stuff. I'm so happy and excited to be back with you today. It's been a pretty slow week for movie news, but I still want to discuss a few things with you. Today, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl, specifically the Super Bowl trailers that we received. We had 10 in total. I'm not going to go through all of those films, but we're going to talk a little bit about the trailers. I want to talk about Ant-Man a bit. There's something things that we should be nervous about. There's something we should be asking some questions about when it comes to Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. There's a new found footage movie called The Outwaters that I want to talk about as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about black romance in film, mainly because I haven't seen, there's been a lot of lists that came out today about romantic leads and best romantic comedies of all time and those types of things. And I'm not seeing a lot of black people represent, and I'm not seeing a lot of black people represented in that. I'm not seeing a lot of black films represented in that. So I want to give some space for that, especially since we're doing Bryon Knows Black Film. So we'll do those things and then we'll get out of here. But I want to start off with the Super Bowl. We had 10 Super Bowl commercials this year. Most of them were really good. I was watching the game and saw some commercials, specifically the the Flash trailer. Jesus Christ, amazing! And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do some reactions to that tomorrow. I get online and all my colleagues are doing reactions real time, but they couldn't wait to talk about the Flash and about Fast X and all these other films that are coming out. I'm like, man, I missed my opportunity. I'm a Kansas City guy. I'm from Kansas City, so I had to watch the game. I was not going to stop watching the game to do some trailer reactions. But we still have some time. I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts about all the films that are coming out, specifically the ones that were discussed or the ones that we got trailers for. First, there's a couple of trailers that we just kind of got like little teasers. Hey, don't forget we're coming out. We're coming out in a couple of months. Look out for us. We got the trailer for Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Just a little teaser, stuff that we've already seen, nothing new in that little clip that we got during the Super Bowl. There are still a lot of people who are nervous about this film. I'm excited about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not sure it's going to be the movie of the year, obviously, but it looks a lot of fun. I don't know why it's getting so many naysayers before it comes out. There hasn't been really any negative leaks from what happened on set. Outside of it being a Dungeons and Dragons movie, I don't know why people are so. It just looks like a lot of fun. Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, and the whole gang. Looks like they're having a lot of fun with the film. Can't wait for it to come out. Honor Amongst Thieves comes out on March 31st, so the end of next month. We also got a quick snippet about 65, the new Adam Driver film. They're just like, hey, just a reminder, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have this huge sci-fi film starring one of the best actors working today, Adam Driver. So don't forget. That's really all it was. Nothing new. Just trying to get you hyped about that movie. I feel like this movie is going to tank. I don't know if it's going to deserve to tank. I feel like it's going to be fairly decent to really good, but I'm not really expecting a lot of people to see this film just because of when it comes out. Looks like it comes out on March, I believe March 3rd. March 10th, I'm sorry, it comes out March 10th. Middle of March. Maybe I'll get some of the high school kids who are out on spring break and college kids are out on spring break. I'm not sure. Creed 3 is another film coming out pretty soon. Creed 3 is actually what comes out on the 3rd of March. Real quick teaser, we get some really good shots of Jonathan Majors and of training, as well as the co-star. I don't know I'm blanking on Killmonger's name right now, but it looks okay. I'm a huge Rocky fan, huge Creed fan. Can't wait for that to come out as well. Let's see what else. Scream actually did, I think, the best with their teaser. Everybody else just kind of gave us like a little 5-second clip here, 5-second clip there, kind of thrown together, mashed together. Scream gave us a whole scene where the crew is trying to escape Ghostface, going from one building to the next using a ladder. I'm assuming somebody's going to fall off of that and die, but we'll see when the movie comes out. But they gave us something to show the fear that's happening in the middle of Scream. This is a really smart franchise. Scream 5 was a lot of fun, surprisingly fun for me. I thought that it was a franchise that was starting to lose steam, but now I think Scream might be one of the best franchises, if not best horror franchises, simply because there are so many of their movies are high quality. They don't really have duds, really. I mean, they have some films that are lackluster, but they're not like terrible like some other franchises have. So we got 65, we got Creed, we got Scream giving us a little bit of a flash in the pan. Transformers also gave it a little bit too. We learned about Mirage, who was going to be Anthony Ramos' character, main buddy, Autobot buddy, like Bumblebee in the past. Bumblebee, the last film, was really good. I liked it a lot, especially when you compare it to the trash that Michael Bay was putting out in terms of trying to represent these characters. I feel like this is going to give kids the sense of wonder with Transformers. Also, Beast Wars, Transformers Beast Wars is what I grew up watching. When I was a kid, that's what I would watch when it would come on Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I can't remember which day it came on. And the Beast Wars, I was really into these animals that were transforming into these Autobots and Decepticons. So I'm glad that we're going to have a little bit of that, a lot of that in the Transformers. So nothing new in any of those trailers. Indiana Jones gave us a few more action scenes. It was a little bit longer than those other trailers. I am excited about Indiana Jones. It's the nostalgia for me. I know that the CGI of Harrison Ford doing all of the acrobatics and things like that, things of that nature, it doesn't look good in the trailer at points. So I'm assuming that it's going to have some problems when the film comes out. I'm sure they used stunt doubles whenever they could, and they CGI what they had to. But Harrison Ford's like 1,000 years old. Did y'all really expect him to come out and do all these things that Indiana Jones? No, this is a goodbye. This is a so long. This is a farewell to the character. He recently was on a late night show, and he was asked who should replace him as Indiana Jones, and he was right. He said nobody. Once he is gone, or once the franchise is done with him, Indiana Jones should probably just go away. Chris Pratt was somebody that I was really interested in being Indiana Jones years ago. He's aged out of that possibility now. I don't see really anybody on the horizon being Indiana Jones. And to be quite frankly, let's get some new stories. Let's get some new blood in there, if you will. So I'm excited about Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones comes out on June 30th. The summer is looking very packed in terms of these blockbusters, as it should. The Fast X franchise continues to get life because these films, no matter how silly and how stupid they are and how much they're unbelievable and how wooden the acting, it's a lot of fun. It's a guilty pleasure. I feel like when I go to a fast film, I'm dreading it because I'm like, man, this isn't going to be good. And I'm sitting there, I'm being skeptical, I'm being antagonistic towards the film, and then it just wins me over. Not every time, but most of the time, it'll win me over. I'm like, okay, this was dumb, but it was a lot of fun. And so, the family's back, family. They're leaning so much into that trope now that it's become a gag to them as well. It's all about family, Dom Toretto and his family, right? And he keeps on, the franchise continues to get all of these A-list actors wanting to be in these films. This time we're getting Jason Momoa as your big baddie. Brie Larson is playing some sort of role. It doesn't seem like, I don't know if she's the sister or if she's like some sort of double agent. I couldn't really tell from the trailer, but they got Brie Larson. These are Oscar winners in this film. Helen Mirren and Charlize Theron. These are Oscar winners in this film. And they seem to all be having so much fun in this franchise. In fact, so much fun that nobody ever leaves. They add more and more and more. John Cena's. They keep adding characters and nobody goes away. I don't know how everybody gets enough screen time, but they figure it out. I'm looking forward to it because I just kind of give up on trying to hate these films or to be a hater of these films, no matter how silly the plot. I just give up on it. Fast X comes out on May 19th. We need to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. This is the trailer I was the most excited for to see. I think that they have not missed on any of the trailers for Guardians 3. We learned a little by little, but mostly they're giving us a little bit of extra jokes. This time we got some information about our main villain, the main antagonist, the High Evolutionary, who's played by the High Evolutionary is played by, I wrote his name down. He's been in a lot of stuff, but he's never been like a main character, or even like a second lead or anything. So this is kind of a big break for him, even though he's been around for years. He's one of those that guys, if you will. His name is Chukwudu Uwuji, and he's playing the High Evolutionary. If anybody knows the comics, High Evolutionary is a cosmic villain, but he's also a villain to the X-Men. So will we get some X-Men action in this? I don't know. Possibly, as the multiverse continues to plan out, but it seems like they're much more interested in telling the goodbye story to the Guardians of the Galaxy. The reason I'm so excited about Guardians of the Galaxy, I was thinking about this earlier this morning when I was preparing for the show, and Guardians of the Galaxy, the franchise, as well as every time they show up on screen, I'm thinking specifically the Avengers movies, Infinity War and Endgame, and even when they show up on stuff like What If, even though the team is mixed up, they may be the most successful team out of Marvel. And I'm including the Avengers. And here's my thinking. You get to know these characters and they meld and they grow together in a very organic way. James Gunn did a tremendous job introducing these characters all at the same time and having this growth continue to happen with these characters at the same time. So much that you're invested not only in the individual characters, but the team as a whole. That's what separated it from the Avengers. The Avengers, outside of your Hawkeyes and your Hulks and stuff like that, your main characters, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, they have their own franchises that we got to get to know them in, and that's where they shine. The Avengers movies, outside of the first one, they're not really a lot of fun. They're really dark. Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame are pretty dark movies. They're the darkest movies in the franchise to me. Avengers Age of Ultron starts out light. There's some really good jokes in the beginning, dealing with Baron Zemo and things like that. But once they create Ultron and Ultron goes haywire, the conflict on that team is so uncomfortable that it's just not a very fun team to be around. Whereas the Guardians, they have their inner turmoils, of course, but you just love being around these guys, and it's going to hurt to see these characters ride off into the sunset. Now, I think that we'll probably keep some of these characters around. Not everybody is leaving. Maybe everybody is leaving, but I would assume that we'll keep some characters around. I said in the previous podcast that if I was voice acting Rocket Raccoon, I would do that forever because you're voice acting. You don't have to be on set. It's probably easier to record around. So I would continue to be Rocket Raccoon if I was playing that role. If I was playing the role of Groot, and all I have to say is I am Groot, Vin Diesel, keep doing that because you collecting checks and it's fun, So, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. We'll see. I think that we're going to have some characters, but obviously, Dave Bautista's gone. He's thanked the franchise, but he's ready to do more serious, dramatic roles. Chris Pratt is going to be gone. Zoe Saldana has talked about how she's gone. Obviously, James Gunn as director is gone. So we're losing our main core of folks, which is fine. And I think they're going to give these characters the right ride up to the sunset. It should be the biggest movie or biggest Marvel movie of the year, if not superhero movie of the year. So I'm looking forward to that. It can't fail. It can't fail. I don't see how it can. I think that they're going to tell the story well. I'm wondering if we're going to be able to get some multiversal stuff in there as well. Is Kang going to be like an alternate version of the Higher Evolutionary? Like how are they going to fit into the story? But I'm sure we're going to get something. The biggest news that came out of the Super Bowl was the Flash trailer. And no matter what you think about Ezra Miller, when you see that trailer, it is hard not to just get as excited as possible. There was so much to enjoy about. Let me back up. So the Flash seems to be taking the story and maneuvering it a bit. The story that they're drawing from is the Flashpoint paradox. And for those who are not comic book readers or haven't watched animated shows or anything like that, the Flashpoint paradox is probably, I would say, top five, maybe not top five, written storylines. I'm not going to say that just because I'm not versed enough in DC to have an opinion on that, but it's definitely, in terms of the mainstream, most popular. I mean, you have the death of Superman and Flashpoint, and probably right after that, to me. So you have this popular series where you have the Flash, who realizes that if he runs fast enough, he can travel back and forth in time, and he is breaking the breaking basically the time stream by doing so. And you get alternate versions and alternate universes. We see Michael Keaton come back in the original Batman uniform, the bat suit, and he looks amazing. He looks like he hasn't even aged when he's inside the suit. Yeah, they're doing some CGI stuff with him when he's doing the fighting, but it looks incredible. Instead of Superman, we get Supergirl. You're getting General Zod as your big baddie. I'm assuming Reverse Flash is going to show up because that's part of the story, but if not, General Zod is enough. He is definitely enough to be the big baddie here. He was the best villain of the Zack Snyder DCEU, in my opinion. It wasn't even close for Zack Snyder's Justice League villains. Even the Justice League villains, I think that General Zod was the best. Michael Shannon was the best actor in a villain role. I think that Ezra Miller having them on the film is going to be the only thing that could possibly tank the ratings and tank the performance of this film, because it looks so good. I understand why James Gunn said it's the best superhero film that he's ever seen, and why they still move forward with this, even given all of the drama around Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller's been trying to go on this apology tour, or at least been meeting with the studio execs. They may have dropped the bag. The story would set them up to continue to be a part of the DCU moving forward. Everybody else could be reset, but the Flash could still be the Flash. But I don't know if they're going to keep them on to do the Flash. We'll see how that goes. What they did was pretty terrible. I think that if Will Smith is still getting canceled, it's hard to vouch for Ezra Miller, and so that's something that they're going to have to play around with. But either way, the reset's coming. The Flash looks amazing. Just based off that trailer, between the Flash, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, those will be the top 3 superhero films of the year. And I don't know what will be 1, 2, or 3. I'm assuming Spider-Verse actually might still be number 1, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. One film that kind of snuck up on me, I knew it was coming out, but I wasn't expecting a trailer for, was Air. And this is Matt Damon and Ben Affleck back together, both producing and directing and doing all the things that they do, and as well as being in front of the camera. It's the story of how Air Jordans came to be, how Phil Knight of Nike approached the family of a rookie, Michael Jordan, to create this signature shoe. Nike was not the shoe, was not the brand. It was a very small company before Michael Jordan signed on with them, and they signed this huge contract. I guess I'm giving you spoilers for the film. They're trying to compete with Adidas and Converse, Converse is really the main shoe. And this is the story how they signed Michael Jordan and become the global phenomenon that we know and love today. So it looks like it's coming on Amazon. Let me just go through these films real quick. Creed comes out on March 3rd. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves is March 31st. Air is April 5th. And this is an Amazon Prime film, so I'm assuming it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to have a theatrical run or not, but Amazon Prime with Air. Transformers Rise of the Beast is June 9th. 65 is March 10th. Scream 6 is March 10th. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is June 30th. Guardians of the Galaxy is May 5th. And Fast X is May 19th. That whole slate, I'm expecting them all to probably be see-its for me, just based off of my excitement for them. There are some that are going to be probably, I mean, probably four out of 10 are not going to be good, or 3 out of 10 are not going to be good. But I'm excited about all of these in some form or fashion, and I can't wait for them to come out and to give you my review for them. One film that I have not had a chance to see yet, but is having some really hard reviews, is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It premiered last week. I actually missed the screener, which happened yesterday on Tuesday, because, well, I was hanging out with my family. I wasn't going to be able to go across town to see a film. Sometimes it just happens, right? And the embargo on reviews was lifted after that screener. And we've been having our critics write and do videos and submit their ratings of the film to Rotten Tomatoes. And right before I started, it was at 57%. It started the day at 71%. And if anybody knows anything about Rotten Tomatoes, the score continues to go down normally as the film gets more and more reviews. So we could get all the way down to the 50s, like 51, 52. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I, once again, have not seen the film, so I don't know what to expect, but I'm very surprised that this film is doing as bad as it is, just because the trailer looked amazing. And I have some friends who I didn't get too much information from, friends that are also critics, but from what I was hearing, probably the biggest issue that a lot of people had that I know that have seen it, and this is really the only information I got, was that Evangeline Lilly's The Wasp isn't really given much to do. And the movie is called Ant-Man and the Wasp. Evangeline Lilly has even expressed a spin-off, the desire to do a spin-off just centering around the Wasp, which we're probably past that at this point. I don't know what the story of Quantumania is. Maybe it does lead up to maybe a series or a show just on the Wasp, but I don't know. I'll be all for more, especially more women characters getting full feature length films in Marvel. So hey, if they can figure out a way to do it, I'm all for it. But it doesn't seem like that's the way the story's going. Jonathan Majors is, I think, one of the best actors working today. I think that he's going to have some longevity, and I'm sure that he's done great as Kang. We also have Michael Douglas, Oscar winner, in the film. Michelle Pfeiffer, Oscar winner in the film. And they both, neither one of them have doubted or just kind of phoned it in these films previous. I don't see why they would do that now. Bill Murray has a lot of heat on him. He was everybody's favorite actor, but he has a lot of heat on him because of what he's been doing on sets ever since the 80s. Some of it borderline sexual harassment, some of it sexual harassment, just straightforward. A lot of meanness coming from Bill Murray, which is not what you hear when he interacts with fans and engages, with the press. But apparently a lot of that was he blames on drugs and stuff like that. But there's stuff that's just as recent as the Aziz Ansari directed film, where production had to stop because of Bill Murray. So that may be clouding some judgment of reviewers. I just wonder, really, how bad can this film be where it's already at 57% and we're nowhere near the Thursday evening release of this film? I feel like this is for Phase 4. There are movies and TV shows in Phase 4 that deserve criticism. I had criticisms of them. But the way that people beat up Marvel for Phase 4 was just preposterous. And it seems like it's now the vogue thing to hate on Marvel properties. Like, I want this film to bomb because it's Marvel. I'm sick of Marvel. I'm sick of Marvel ruining the box office. Even people have Black Panther issue. I'm like, Black Panther was is probably the best superhero film of last year. You can say that, or the Batman, but it was one of those two. And it's like, come on, guys, are we really being honest with our critique. Now, you can analyze the film. I'm just wondering what the audience score will look like. I guess that's what I want to say. I wonder what the audience score is going to be. Do we as critics need to lighten up a little bit when it comes to these films? Not grade on a curve. I'm not saying that, even though sometimes that happens. It happens a lot. But let's be honest. Is the film's detriment, the things that don't work in the film, are they bad? That bad? We'll see. I still don't understand why Eternals got such a bad review. I still don't understand why people really. There's some people who really hated Multiverse of Madness. I don't get it. I don't get a lot of the hate that came on the TV shows. I do understand why people had issues with Thor: Love and Thunder, because that was pretty disappointing. But outside of that, Phase 4, as fast as it went, was pretty good. Now, on the flip side of that, I also wonder, does Marvel have any regrets for approaching this Kang the Conqueror storyline going into Secret Wars? But Secret Wars really doesn't have anything to do with Kang the Conqueror anyway. But I mean, in the comics, it's somebody else that's the main bad guy in that. But we're moving towards Secret Wars, and it seems like it's just too complicated, and trying to thread these things together seems to be at the cost of storytelling at some points. At least in the minds of some critics and some audience viewers, or maybe it's too complicated. I feel like the threads are fitting nicely sometimes. Most of the times they are, when they feel like they need to make those threads connect. But let's be honest, the Kang the Conqueror uh, uh, saga, I guess, that's in the comics, it's not that complicated. Secret Wars took over all of Marvel when it happened, but it was still a pretty simple story, and it wasn't that good. If I can be honest with you, Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2, Secret Wars 2 is terrible, but Secret Wars, the first one, it isn't really that great of a story. So maybe simplify some things. I had made a pitch about Marvel maybe a year ago, that hey, not everything you make needs to tie into the multiverse. Have some standalone storytelling, because that's what happens in the comics. That crossover stuff does not have to happen between every single property. Could we have gotten away with Ant-Man just being an Ant-Man film? Absolutely. But they wanted to use the quantum realm where where Hope Van Dyne was stuck, as a way to find another Kang. I get that, but did you need to do it? Did you need to do it? Could we have just had a end scene with Kang the Conqueror at the end of a typical Ant-Man film, like we got with Phase 1 and Phase 2, where we were getting these little slivers of ideas that Thanos was coming? That was the connective tissue for all those films, was the end trailer, really. So I don't know. I don't know if it's probably a mix of both. There's probably issues with Ant-Man, and there's probably fatigue and unreasonable expectations from critics. I think that it's both. You let me know. I'll let you know what I think of the film when it comes out next Friday, or this Friday. I'll go see it Thursday, so I can hurry up and get a review out and let you know my thoughts. If anybody has any comments or questions, just go ahead and put it in the chat. The chat is open. The chat is open. So another reason why I didn't get any trailer reactions out is because after the Super Bowl and the Chiefs won, I actually went to the movies, because I like going to the movies, and I saw this film that I've been hearing little things about, but didn't know much about going into it. And it's a found footage horror movie called The Outwaters. It is a film that's directed, written, produced, starring Robert Banfitch. I don't know Robert Banfitch in terms of his work. I looked up his IMDb. He's mostly done shorts, which is par for the course when you're doing a found footage film. That is usually, they're really cheaply made because they're easy to make that way. In fact, they tend to be better the more the less money that's involved. The really stylized and overdone found footage films just don't have the same feeling of authenticity. They don't have the same feeling of authenticity. But I didn't know what to expect, and just I'm gonna give you a couple of threads. I'm not gonna tell you everything, but the film is about this group of friends. There's four of them, and one of the people in the group has a lot of talent as a folk song artist, talent that was possibly inherited from her mother, who she lost, and she likes to sing because it reminds her of her mother, and she's really talented at it. And they're trying to get her discovered. So they decide to go to the desert in Arizona to shoot this folklore kind of hippie-ish type of music video. And so the four of them head out to the desert, but in the background there's been these earthquakes and these terrible storms. They probably should have waited, but they went out there anyway. And when they get out there, things go bananas. That's all I'm going to say in terms of the plot. What's so impressive about this film is that found footage is really hard to keep fresh and keep exciting at this point, because there is certain rules with found footage that you have to follow. The footage has been found, so everything that's on that footage has had to happen. It can't be the figment of somebody's imagination. It can't be any psychological issues. Usually, found footage, especially supernatural found footage films, you'll have footage or people filming stuff, and then something happens in the background that they may not have caught when they were filming, or they put their camera down to go to another room or something like that, and something happens while they're away and they miss it. Or in the case of Paranormal Activity, they had all these security type of video recorders, video cameras up, and things were getting caught while they were asleep, and you would see something move or something shake, or you go, oh my God, what's that? You know, and that's the way they catch you. But after a while, that gets pretty old, right? Sometimes they catch the horror right up front. Cloverfield is probably the biggest example I can think of off the top of my head, where they're just pretty straightforward with what is going on. What The Outwaters does is it gives you a supernatural. I don't even know if it's a supernatural. It's I'm gonna call it supernatural, but it doesn't really feel supernatural. It feels something else. It feels more sci-fi-ish. Like there are things happening in the film where if it wasn't found footage, you would think that these people were on mushrooms or they were on psychedelics and they were just having a bad trip. But things are happening. It's gory. It's very frustrating to look at. There's times when a huge points of the movie where they're giving you maybe this big of a hole to look at in terms of the footage, like the size of a nickel for the whole screen. And you hear a lot, but you don't see a lot, and but you're able to put pieces together, and the more you put together, the less you want to see. It's really Lovecraftian in that way. It's there's a dread that exists within this film and a tension that's built within this film. The more you know, the more you don't know, and then unknown is infuriating, and it's also pretty frightening. And as it builds, it slowly builds, and it builds to this climax of you're like, oh my God, I think I know what's going on. And when you get there, that peak feeling of dread does not drop down until the movie ends. And it ends on that note. I'll say that much. So what am I saying? I'm saying, see it streaming or skip it. You have to go see this movie. If you can get to a theater, it's a very limited release. If you see The Outwaters playing in your cinema, no matter what else is out, because everything else is going to have longer theater runs and things of that nature, go see this film before it is out of theaters and come tell me what you think. I promise you, you will not. I guarantee, if you're a horror fan, you will not be disappointed about this film. It's one of the best horror films that I have seen in quite some time. And that's saying a lot given the amazing year of horror that we had in 2022. So The Outwaters. I gotta look up his name again. Robert Banfitch. Check him out. Okay, I want to finish up with talk a little bit about love. It's February 14th. It's Valentine's Day. Everybody's all booed up and going on your dates and what should you see. There's a lot of lists that are coming out. Greatest romantic leads and greatest romantic comedy and greatest movie romances. And as I'm looking at these things that have been coming out the last couple of days, Rotten Tomatoes had some stuff out. Movie Web has some stuff out. A couple other spaces, and these are spaces that I read all the time. I'm not trying to disparage them, but I noticed that there was something missing in all those, and that was the stories of us. I didn't see. There was one thing I read that was about greatest female black romantic leads, and there was not a black person on there. And I'm like, really? Maybe I'm watching films that you're not watching. I'm assuming that's the case. Why are these films buried? So I want to talk about a few of them. I'm not going to go through all of them. I had about 20 on my list. I was thinking about Stella, how Stella got her groove back, and Poetic Justice, and Jason's Lyric, a lot of stuff from the 90s and 80s. I was thinking about those films, but I really just want to focus on 5 just for the sake of time. Let's start with some old school ones. The oldest film I had on my list was this film starring Dorothy Dandridge, Harry Belafonte, and Joe Adams as your leads, as well as Pearl Bailey is in the film. So this is 1954's. I think it came out in 1954. Carmen Jones. Carmen Jones is a film about a woman who basically gets whatever she wants. She plays dudes, and she's free spirited, and she's unapologetic about it. And there's one guy, at least in the beginning, that she just could not snag to save her life, and that was Harry Belafonte's character. This is happening on like an army base or Air Force base. I wish I had a chance to rewatch before I did this podcast. And Harry Belafonte plays this pilot, and eventually he and Joe Adams' character, who plays a boxer, they end up basically vying for Carmen Jones, and Carmen Jones is playing both of them. Look, especially between Harry Belafonte and Dorothy Dandridge, their chemistry on set is eclectic. I don't know if there was anything that was just this in your face sexy back then in 1950s. I feel like I have some pretty big black spots when it comes to 1940s and 1950s film, but this movie is sexy. This movie would have been sexy in the 70s and 80s to me. I mean, Dorothy Dandridge just oozes charisma and sexuality, and there's this aura about her that you want to know more with her about her. You want to be her. You want to be with her, right? So it's understandable why she received her Oscar nomination. It's obvious why she received her Oscar nomination for this film. I love this film. It should be mixed. It's not a romantic comedy. It's a drama, if anything. But still, I saw it on no list, and it's a Oscar winning or Oscar award nominated film. What's up with that? Another film that is old school, came out in 1968, was Claudine. This is starring James Earl Jones and Diane Carroll. This is a romantic comedy with a dramedy kind of mixed into it. The tone I think of actually a little bit is of Crooklyn in terms of tone, in terms of the mix of comedy and drama. This film, when I first heard the premise of this film, I thought I wasn't going to like it at all. It's basically this woman who she has 6 kids. She's been married. She's alone. She's trying to raise these kids on a menial salary as a maid, and she's on welfare because she's not making enough. The society does not build her up to be successful without getting some support. And she falls in love with James Earl Jones' character, who's a trash worker who isn't making any money either. I think in the film she makes more money than him. But they can't be together publicly because the welfare officials will cancel her welfare if they get married, or even if she had like a steady boyfriend. It was really weird, the welfare, my understanding of the welfare system back then. But it's funny because the interactions with the family, and James Earl Jones's character is funny, and also there's some tension there too, specifically between the oldest son, the interactions with the daughters, and Diana Carroll's character as well. Diana Carroll was nominated for Oscar for this film, by the way, which is amazing. D movie man, I love Carmen Jones. I love the costuming, the casting, the music, the whole aesthetic of the film. Its portrayal of Black Americans at the time, well as Dorothy Dandridge's nomination, is the cherry on top. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Carmen Jones is the stuff. I I don't. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon or something. In fact, you probably can find it on YouTube if you wanted to see Carmen Jones, because a lot of those old films are on YouTube. It's part of the Criterion Collection. I know that. Turn Classic Movies probably has it on their streamer. If you're one of the nerds like me that has a Turn Classic movie subscription or whatever, check it out. But I'm with you 100%. So yeah, check out Claudine. Claudine, I thought was going to be a hot ghetto mess. I don't know how else to say it. I felt like the whole welfare queen type of thing is basically what they're trying to do. Before that term was something, and the derogatory nature of the way that they were very much using it as a dog whistle. Um, I thought I wasn't going to like that. I thought it was going to be too much, but that's not really what it's about. It's really about poverty and how people do deserve to have love and to have a life, even if they're living in these menial systems. I mean, Claudine, the reason why had 6 kids and didn't have a husband wasn't her fault. It wasn't her fault. That's just the situation that she ended up with. You're supposed to have kids when you're married. I mean, you're not supposed to, but if you have kids in wedlock, you're not expecting to not have to raise those children outside of. I mean, it all makes sense when you watch it. James Earl Jones, a young James Earl Jones, is great. Check out Claudine. The next movie I want to talk about, this actually did show up on some lists, and I love this movie and I hate this movie. And that is Boomerang, starring Eddie Murphy, Halle Berry, and Robin Givens. One of the most entertaining romantic comedies. Definitely one of the most entertaining black romantic comedies. We're gonna put it in that category. Uh, that's out there. Eddie Murphy is just oozing charisma. This is when he was like kind of not distancing himself. He wasn't distancing himself from Beverly Hills Cop and those types of films, but he wanted to do more films that centered around black characters and black people. We had Coming to America that came out before this, I believe, which another film that I love quite a lot. But I wanted to talk about Boomerang specifically. One of his best roles, in my opinion, in terms of what he was able to do here. Halle Berry is amazing. Robin Givens is pretty good in this film too. I I have some as a Halle Berry stan, both in terms of her acting as well as, let's be honest with you, with ourselves. High school, middle school, Brian Williams loved Halle Berry. I mean, she's the most beautiful woman on the planet, and I just did not understand. No matter how bummy they try to make Halle Berry look in this film, why once Eddie Murphy's character was actually able to get with her and to kind of become an item, why he would ever have went back to Robin Givens in the first place. I know it's the whole thing's about him. The Boomerang, he was mistreating women, using women and getting rid of them, and Robin Givens' character did the same thing to him, and his pride couldn't allow it. But come on, man, it's Halle Berry. Come on, man. Halle Berry didn't make sense to me. He shouldn't have ended up with any of them. That would have been a better ending to me if Halle Berry would have walked away. I don't think she should have ended up with the other character, David Allen Greer's character, or anything, because he was kind of like a dork, and it just didn't. The whole nice guys finish last. Nice guys sometimes just aren't interesting. He just wasn't an interesting guy, right? His parents were way more interesting than he was. Anyway, I'm going to ramble here. The Boomerang's amazing. You really hate, at least I did. I really did not like the character of Eddie Murphy. And I think that was the point. And maybe in 2023, if this movie was made again, I don't think he ends up with anybody. I think probably the movie centers more on Halle Berry than him. But yeah, check out Boomerang if you haven't seen it. D Movie Man said, listen, the Turner Classic Movie Channel stays on my rotation. I agree that Claudine was surprising. I was expecting something more stereotypical as far as black exploitation. Absolutely. The guy, what is it? Ben Mankiewicz. I think he's Joseph Mankiewicz, his uncle or nephew, which is crazy. He's like one of the main voices of Turner Classic Movies. I first start seeing him on the news with he was on the Young Turks and some other places before I saw him on Turner Classic Movies. But then I finally put those threads together, man. So that's cool, you know. Joseph Mankiewicz was one of the guys that helped to write. Um, they had the movie about it, Mank. Why can't I think of it? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're not talking about Joseph Mankiewicz. We're talking about Boomerang. And the next film I want to talk about is Brown Sugar. This is probably my favorite romantic comedy of the 2000s. I think it came out in 2002. I should have looked it up. I really think Sanaa Lathan should be on anybody's list of great romantic leads. And that's was one of the things that was really upsetting. I didn't see her on anything. And she was basically the black Meg Ryan or the black Julia Roberts. I mean, she was in all of these romantic comedies and dramedies. Best Man, another film I'm gonna talk about a little bit later, Disappearing Acts, and she really was like the staple of all these films, and she was amazing. She was incredible. Not only did she have that, I won't say girl next door, but that sweet kind of girl that you want to date, that you want to be in a relationship type of vibe to her, but she also was funny when she needed to be funny. I think that she even had a movie that came out recently. It wasn't as good as her earlier work, but I think it was called Nappy Head or something, or Nappy, where she has to cut off all her hair. She's just good, man. And Brown Sugar, her and Tay Diggs, the chemistry is great. The reason I like this film so much is because it was one of those films where these two probably should have been together their whole lives, and they wasn't. But it was a story more of friendship first than it was a romance that butted into a romance. There was feelings there that was never really explored correctly, and they finally started to do that, and they ended up together. I liked it because it was predictable. It was predictable. It was in terms of that's the way I feel like life should work. You should have friends that you. Um, that's the way you would hope things would work. You know, in terms of progressing, in terms of a natural a way of going on things. And I thought Brown Sugar was great. Also, the music in the background, the ode to hip hop, specifically that 1990s era of hip hop's a little bit of 1980s, but they really focused on the 1990s of hip hop, which is the music that I grew up with. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Brown Sugar. If you're looking for a film to see today on February 14th on Valentine's Day with your significant other, I think that's probably the one I'm going to recommend. The other movie is also Sanaa Lathan movie, and it's probably 1A, 1B for me for romantic comedy. So this is really more of a romantic drama, and that's Love and Basketball. Who doesn't love Love and Basketball? Love and Basketball is only hurt by one thing, and that's the basketball. Because Sanaa Lathan, she's a lot of things, but she's not an athlete. And they even tell stories about how she didn't even know how to dribble before this movie started to film. But Gina Prince Blythewood, who directed this film, you probably know her much more recently for directing The Woman King. She's an athlete, and she was really wanted to make sure that she wasn't using a bunch of stunt doubles, that she wanted her actors to do the basketball in this film. And the basketball, some of the stuff just wasn't believable. I'll put it that way. Um, in terms of if I was compared to like Above the Rim or something like that. But either way, the characters are really important. I think that the independence and the voice that they give Sanaa Lathan's character outside of the romance is really important, because I think that's really important for women who are watching these films, specifically young girls, that your whole life, even though you may be in love with somebody, your whole life doesn't have to revolve around somebody. You can have your own successes, and you can go out and do your own thing and live your own life. And if things work out, it works out. But your whole being doesn't have to be wrapped up in a man. And also, I think it was a good story for men to learn how to be vulnerable. Omar Epps' character had to eventually let his guard down and stop being so full of himself and realize what was right in front of him. So, um, D Movie Man is talk about Boomerang. I missed his comment earlier. Uh, Absolutely about the star-studded cast that was in this film. I mean, David Alan Grier was in this film. Martin Lawrence was in this film, or am I thinking about? Yeah, Martin Lawrence was in this film. He was one of the three friends with Eddie Murphy. We had the late great Eartha Kitt that was in this film as well. Um, there was so much talent, and that's what similar to what he did with his other films, like Coming to America. He was really trying to not only speak back to the black community as opposed to some of the more mainstream movies he did previously in the 80s, but also put people on. He was trying to put people on. And I always am going to respect him putting people on. I talked about Tyler Perry last week. I'm not a fan of his films, but he puts people on. And I respect that. So, yeah. So those are the movies I wanted to talk about. I'm about out of time here. I was going to talk about Moonlight, but I talked about Moonlight a lot last week too because of the directors. I had Barry Jenkins as my number three my number four best black director of all time, and a lot of it had to do with Moonlight, which I believe is a perfect film, maybe one of the best films, if not the best film of the decade. I really think it's that good. And Moonlight is a coming of age movie, but there is this romance in there that's very complicated, but also very sweet and kind of anchors the story as you go through it, even though there's some messed up stuff that happens with it too. There's so many good things in Moonlight. I was thinking about talking about Love Jones, and there's so many options out there that are not being talked about enough, especially with Valentine's Day being Black History Month. All of these blog sites putting these lists out. I'm not going to say that I was mad. I was just irritated that the films that I know are good and they mean a lot to a certain sect of society just weren't being mentioned. And I'm sure people of Latinx descent can say the same thing. And it's just very lily white movies that were being promoted. I love Julia Roberts. I love Meg Ryan. You Got Mail is amazing. Sleepers in Seattle is amazing, right? All of these films. I love Drew Barrymore. I'm not going to take away from any of them. Also, all the romantic movies from the old times, the golden age of Hollywood, all the way up to the 60s. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. They should be mentioned. But give us some space. Give us some credit. We did some stuff too. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I don't really have anything else. Let me see if I missed any other comments here. Yeah, I think we're good to go. So yeah, follow me on at Bryon Knows Movies everywhere. That's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. My website's bryonKnowsMovies.com. Turn on your notifications so you get notified when my live stream starts. And come join me every Tuesday for See It, a show about movies and stuff. I'll be here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys next week.